Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into a really powerful idea, organizational resilience. We're going to break down the concept using some amazing research from Stephanie Duchek to build a clear, super useful framework for understanding what is, let's face it, one of the most critical topics in business today.
You've seen it happen, right? When the unexpected hits, a supply chain just shatters, the market shifts overnight, or, a global pandemic. Some companies just crumble, but others, they seem to find a whole new gear. So what's the difference? Well, the answer is a powerful but honestly often misunderstood concept: resilience.
And part of the reason it's so confusing is that resilience is kind of a buzzword. And what's really interesting is that even researchers don't always agree on what it means. For some, it's just about resisting a shock and recovering, bouncing back to normal. For others, it's about adaptation, using that crisis to actually get stronger. And then there's a third group that says, hey, it's all about anticipation, seeing the trouble coming before it even starts. So, which one is it?
To make sense of all this, we're going to follow a really clear roadmap. We'll start with that resilience puzzle, then I'll introduce you to this fantastic three-stage framework. We'll walk through what resilient organizations do before, during, and after a crisis. And then finally, we'll look at the fuel that powers this whole engine.
Okay, let's get into it. The big idea here is that we should stop thinking about resilience as just one single thing. Instead, let's see it as a meta capability. Now, that sounds fancy, but all it means is it's a combination of different skills that all work together over time in three distinct stages.
And here they are, the heart of the whole framework. This shows that the most resilient organizations, they don't just react well, they anticipate what might happen. They cope with it effectively while it's all going down. And this is the crucial part. They adapt and learn after it's over. It creates this powerful, virtuous cycle of getting better and better.
All right, let's dig into that first stage. We're going to see how this all builds, starting with what these organizations are doing before a crisis even shows up on the radar. This is the proactive part, where the real foundation for resilience is built.
Now, let's be super clear. Anticipation is not about having a crystal ball. Nobody can predict the future. That's impossible. What it is about is being so tuned into what's happening around you that you can spot potential dangers early. It's about having systems in place so you're ready to handle the unexpected when it finally shows up.
So how do you build this capability? Well, through some really concrete practices. You're actively scanning the environment for what they call weak signals, those little early clues that a big change might be coming. You're also building general recovery plans and resources that aren't tied to just one specific threat. And you're doing scenario planning, where you get together and actually imagine and play out different, even kind of wild futures.
And you know who is absolutely brilliant at anticipation? So-called high-reliability organizations, or HROs. Think about nuclear power plants or aircraft carriers, places where one tiny mistake could be catastrophic. These organizations are totally obsessed with preventing failure, and they do it by constantly, relentlessly anticipating what might go wrong.
Okay, so boom, the crisis hits. We're in the eye of the storm now. The unexpected is here. What does resilience look like when everything is unfolding in real time and chaos is pretty much the new normal? This stage is all about coping. It's about managing that chaos. It's not about stubbornly sticking to a plan you wrote 6 months ago that's now completely useless. It's a mix of really clear-eyed acceptance of the situation and decisive, creative action, all while you're under some serious pressure. And this involves 3 key skills. First up, just accepting the problem. Resilient organizations don't waste precious time in denial. They face reality fast. Second, something called sense-making. This is where the team comes together to figure out, okay, what is actually happening right now? And third, this fantastic idea called bricolage and improvisation. It's the art of using whatever tools and knowledge you have lying around to invent new solutions on the fly. So this quote from the great organizational thinker Carl Weick is so important. It tells us that understanding a crisis isn't passive. You don't just sit back and watch it happen. You and your team are actively creating a shared understanding of reality. You're making sense of it together, and that's what allows you to act effectively.
All right, the storm has passed. The immediate danger is gone. Now for a lot of companies, this is where the story ends. Phew, we survived. But for the truly resilient ones, the most important work is actually just getting started.
This right here might be the single biggest game changer. Real resilience isn't just about surviving. It's not about getting back to the way things were. It's about bouncing forward.
It's about using that crisis as a powerful launching pad for learning, for growth, and for real positive change.
So how does this happen? There are a few key things. Deep reflection, actually taking the time to ask what happened and why. There's also vicarious learning, which is just a smart way of saying you study the mistakes and the close calls of other companies so you don't have to learn every single lesson the hard way. And maybe most important of all, you make sure that those lessons learned, the ones that usually end up in a report and nobody reads, are translated into actual changes in how the organization works. And this is where it all clicks together into that powerful feedback loop we talked about. The learning you do from a crisis, which is reactive, directly makes you better at learning for the next one. The adaptation phase feeds right back into your anticipation phase, making the whole organization smarter and way more prepared for whatever comes next. So, we have the 3 stages: anticipate, cope, adapt. But what's the fuel? What's powering this whole resilience engine? Well, the research points to 4 key drivers that make it all possible. First up, a diverse knowledge base. It's simple, really. The more your organization knows from a wide variety of sources, the more tools you have in your toolbox to see threats coming and to figure out creative solutions. Second, you need some resources available. Resilience isn't free. You need some slack in the system, a little extra cash, people with some available time. That's the critical buffer that lets you absorb the shock and actually fund the recovery. Third, and this one is huge, is what we call social resources or social capital. This is all about the trust, the communication, the relationships between people. It is the glue that holds the entire crisis response together, especially when the formal org chart starts to break down. And finally, number 4, a culture of decentralized power and responsibility. This means empowering the experts on the ground to make decisions, instead of waiting for everything to go up the chain of command. It lets the organization act with speed and agility when it matters most. So, if you're going to take just one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Resilience isn't a trophy you put on the shelf. It's not a destination you finally arrive at. It's a dynamic, living, ongoing process of preparing, responding, learning, and evolving over and over and over again. And that leaves us with a really big question to think about. This framework gives us a whole new lens to ask. Is my organization just built to survive? Or is it intentionally designed to actually get stronger, smarter, and more capable because of the unexpected challenges it will inevitably face? That's a powerful shift in mindset.